The Rav Kook begins his book Lenevuchei Hador by stating, "Shadam nivra b'tzelem Elohim, ze hayesod shel kol haTorah." That humanity is created in the image of the divine. This is the essence of the entire Torah, and this is true in particular with Torah HaKabbalah, the mystical part of Judaism, and which a lot is based on the connection and parallel between the human and the divine. And the idea of Tzelem Elohim has had a tremendous impact in world culture, philosophy, and values. Phrases like sanctity of life, a lot of that comes from that belief in this human-divine connection. But one application, a very fundamental application of this idea within the Zohar is empowering relations between people, in particular between those of men and women, by seeing that it is the idea of the Tzelem Elohim, the image of God, and their relationship as a meeting, a connection of the divine. And here, to maybe give a background, I could share three approaches to the book to Shiurim, which is a love story, poems of love between two figures, male and female. The classical interpretation of why Shiurim is included in the books of the Tanakh is to say that this is an allegory between the connection between God and the Jewish people. In this approach, the two lovers, respectively, were presented as male and female, would be God and the Jewish people. But within Chazal, it's clear that there's another interpretation that sees, in some ways, to say that it's a love song on a human level. We know that Rabbi Akiva, who said, Kol Aktuvim Kodesh, V'Shirashim Kodesh Kodashim, Rabbi Akiva, that Shiurim is the holy of the holiest, is also Rabbi Akiva that said, Ish Visha Zachu Shechina B'neihem. And is also Rabbi Akiva who says, Chaviv Adam Shenivra B'Tzelem. So Rabbi Akiva in Pirkei Avot focuses on the value of human life as being that we are B'Tzelem Elohim, the image of God. And therefore it's the same Rabbi Akiva who says that the Klal Gadol of the Torah is V'ahavta l'reacha kamocha, because if the divine is in the other, we understand why loving the other is the Klal Gadol of the Torah. But I think this is also Rabbi Akiva relating to what he says in Masechet Sotah that I quoted a moment ago. Ish v'isha zachu shechina b'neihem, a man and woman who are worthy, the divine is between them. God is between them, is also reflecting of a couple, the man and the woman, as reflecting, as creating a place of the divine presence. We know that the drasha in the Gemara is that Ish, man, has the letter Yud in his name. Isha has two letters the same, Aleph, Shin, Eish, but also the Hey. And the Yud, Hey, together, they form the name of God. There are many mitzvot, that before the mitzvot we say, L'shem Yuchud Kudsha B'ruchu Shchintei. That we do this to create a unity in the realm of the divine of connecting Kudsha B'ruchu Ushchintei. Kudsha B'ruchu would be God, transcendental, beyond the world, and Shchintei, the Shekhinah, the divine as more imminent, manifested in the world. And Yichud Kudsha B'ruchu Shchintei is to create the oneness in the realm of the divine. But I sometimes suggest people before dates say, if you're going on a date, say L'shem Yichud Kudsha B'ruchu Shchintei, because if the male in Kabbalah represents Kudsha B'ruchu, the female, the Shekhinah, so this is what it's about. But in Rabbi Akiva, I would argue that Rabbi Akiva, who gives such great value and divine presence to male-female connections, I would offer another interpretation of Shiurim, not only as an allegory of God and the Jewish people, but to say that even a love connection between man and woman is also a place of the divine, is also Kodesh Kodashim. The Zohar and the Kabbalah gives a third approach to Shir Hashirim. That the love story of Shir Hashirim, it's not only God and the Jewish people, it's not a man and woman, it is a story within the realm of the divine. That the realm of the divine itself, there is Kudsha Birchu Shchintei, as I mentioned earlier, and the love story is the yearning to achieve again that oneness, that connection, that unity in the realm of the divine, by connecting Kudsha Birchu Shchintei, the male reflecting Kudsha Birchu, the female Shchintei. So there are three approaches, and I think the essence of the worldview within the Zohar Kadosh is to teach us that these three relationships are all interconnected, meaning a person's connection with their wives, the connection of Kudsha Birchu Shchintei, and the connection of the world above, God and humanity. These are three parallel stories, but they're all interconnected, and all are really expressing the other. Okay, so this is a general introduction, which also explains why relationships are so significant within the Zohar, because the vision of the unity is expressed in many ways in the connection on a human level between people, and again, in particularly between husband and wife. So the first passage we'll read is from the Zohar on Shir Hashirim. So I'll read it slowly because we don't have the text to hand out. Rabbi Ruchumai Patach. Rabbi Ruchumai opens. And the name here is significant because Ruchumai really means love. In Hebrew, Rachmanut would be mercy, but in Aramaic, Rachmana, Ruchumai is love. So it's Rebbe Love opens. He must have been born in the 60s. He brings a pasuk in Yeshayahu that talks about the Mashiach. V'nacha alav ruach Hashem. Will rest upon him the spirit of God, ruach chachma bina, a spirit of wisdom and understanding, ruach etza ugvura, a spirit of advice and strength, ruach dat v'yirat Hashem, and finally a spirit of knowledge and the fear of God. Hine kan arba ruchot. This pasuk in Yeshayahu mentions 4 ruchot. V'lo zacha behem adam, but no one was privileged to have all of these 4 ruchot. Zulati melech HaMashiach bilvad. So if you want somebody who incorporates all 4 of these ruchot, this will only be the Messiah. Vari Ketuv. The Zohar asks that there's another verse that says, Mi arba ruchot bayaruach. From 4 ruchot. Here, ruach in Hebrew could be directions, the 4 directions. Ruach is also breath and also wind and spirit. From the 4 wind, from the 4 directions comes the ruach. Lo kutuv arba, elami arba ruchot. There's one ruach that comes from 4 ruchot. Zel ruach shalem. So, are there 4 ruchot that exist as 4 ruchot, or is it ultimately one ruach, which might have been built, that have been built from the 4 ruchot? Amar lo hech, how? Okay, so now we're going to explain it. Amar lo ze ba mitoch avat neshika. This is what comes from the kiss of love. The kiss of love is what takes 4 ruchot, 4 breaths or 4 spirits, and makes them into one. How? Neshika mi'ava, a kiss of love, eino ela bepeh, is with the mouth. Why? Umitchabrot ruach beruach. The mouth is we breathe through the mouth. Our ruach, our breath, and again in Hebrew, ruach is both the spirit and the breath. Our ruach comes out of our mouth. So a kiss of mouth to mouth is an expression of linking together spirit and spirit, soul and soul. Okay, so now we understand why a kiss of love should be 2 ruchot. But how do we get to 4? Why 4 ruchot? V'kol echad mehem kolul mishtei ruchot. Each of these 2 ruchot include 2 ruchot. Rucho v'ruach chavero. Nimtzu'u shnehem ba'arba ruchot. Why is it 4? Because when there's a relationship, each of us in time has not only our spirit, but we incorporate also the other person's spirit. So in me, it's really 2. In you, it's also 2. And that's the dynamic nature of a relationship, that there's true interconnection. After a long time, I still have my spirit, but something of the other person really, lahavda, like a horcrux, the other person enters me. It becomes part of me. And then when the person meets me, they're meeting not just me, but they're meeting themselves as expressed in me. I know that after being married for more than 20 years, so many things and qualities of my wife, and also vice versa, I've incorporated. And often when we interact, so I know that she's not only interacting with me, but interacting with her as expressed inside of me. So these are the 4 ruchot. Me and you. If it was just me and you, it would ultimately be something static, because I am me, you are you. But our connection is dynamic, like 2 mirrors that are facing each other. You'll find an infinite number of reflections. So we each incorporate the other person, and we continue to create a meeting. So through a long relationship, you could meet yourself in the other person. Okay, so these are the 4 ruchot. And the Zohar continues, V'kol shekain, and even more so, hazachar v'nekeva bitchabram, the male and the female in their connection. Here we realize that the Zohar till now wasn't necessarily talking about a relationship between men and women, but all human relationships. And in that context, the kiss of love would be then a metaphor for the spiritual relationship between peoples whose spirits link and combine. But it's even more so when talking about a relationship between male and female, because first of all, the male-female, when we're talking about, the Zohar is obviously referring to a marriage relationship. It's an intensive, long-term relationship, a relationship which is built on incorporating the other person's spirit and its constant dynamic. Is a relationship that's going to always seek to be going up. Sometimes the world focuses, certainly popular culture, on what would be the state of falling in love. The end of the movie is about when they're falling in love. The song is when they're in love, is that initial state, but they don't really continue on and on. And the Zohar's dynamic is not about falling in love. It's about creating something by linking the spirit in me, the spirit in you, and creating and interconnecting those 4 ruchot. So now, so first of all, a marriage relationship is long-term and intensive. Second of all, a marriage relationship, it'll have the connection is multi-dimensional. It won't only be in spirit and soul, but also in body. And we're now in a generation that talks a lot about guf nefesh, the interplay between body and soul. And number three, men and women are different. And the difference allows a greater quality of the significance of the connection. The Zohar, as we've mentioned many times, the teaching of the Zohar that shalom, the power of shalom, is to link the shin, which represents eish, fire, with the mem that represents mayim, water. The power of shalom is taking two opposites and linking them together. So that's why shalom among people is men and women. That's the big, not always so easy, but that's the big, and it's not easy for a reason, because it's two worlds. It's part of within the world of feminism. There are two approaches. One, classical, would try to erase differences between the men and women, and the other would try to empower the uniqueness of each gender. So the Zohar certainly is that second part of feminism, because it's talking about a very egalitarian relationship of two sides forming one with the two arba ruchot, but the power is the difference, that they're opposites, and opposites, they say opposites attract, but opposites also have the ability to create and be much wider in what's created by their connection, much more than a connection between two forces that are similar or the same. I know Rav Menachem Fruman used to always joke that how he gets along with his wife, that even though she's a Yeki and I'm a Glitzianer, and not only that, she's a woman and I'm a man. And he also it's said that once a minister of the government came to visit Rav Fruman's town in Tekoa, and the minister said, "I heard that this is a mixed community, that they're both Datiim and Chilonim living in Tekoa." And Rav Fruman said, "That's nothing. Sometimes in the same house you have a mix. You have a man and a woman living in the same house together." So clearly, this is a great ideal, and it's something which it's fire and water. But I think I mentioned that in Jewish tradition, the men are water, the women are fire. It goes back also to the word Isha. For the Aleph Shin Eish is present in the word for man and the word for woman, but for man there is a letter. The Yud separates the Aleph and the Shin, so the fire is a little bit further apart. But by woman, Aleph Shin Hey, you have the fire together. And this I think I want to mention when I was giving a lecture in China, and I told the Chinese this, they're pretty surprised. And then one of the Chinese men said, "So I see that it would be a problem, he said, us Chinese, the men are fire, the women are water. So for a Chinese man to marry a Jewish woman, this would be very problematic. It would be much too much fire." Okay, but anyway, the Zohar talks about a vision of kol shekain, even more so with the zachar and the nekeva, the male and the female. We have this creation of four spirits in the nishika shalava. And I think this is really important, because sometimes the alternate way of presenting things are to say that together we're one. For a couple to say that together we're four, some might sound a little bit less romantic than to say together we are one. But there is a problem to say together we are one. I took once a course in couple relations with Heidi Schleifer, and she said her problem with people saying together we are one is that often there's a subtext that each person says to themselves, together we are one, and I am the one. That by seeing a relationship of two people being one together, you're faced with a problem about who is that one. Sometimes people will see their spouse as part of their oneness, but as a result, not really see them and their way of looking at the world, and will only see one perspective. So the challenge is to connect without erasing the other person's individuality. And here the Zohar doesn't even settle for saying together we are two, but together we are four. Okay, getting pretty crowded over here, right? Okay, but nevertheless we look for about where do we get to the one. Vaben abba mihem, but the child that comes from them, zui ruach haba maruchot. By the parents, it's very dynamic. We each, between us, there are four ruchot, four spirits. Mine, yours, you as expressed in me, and me as expressed in you. But our child ultimately will be something coherent. Mi'ar ruchot baruach zel ruach shalem. This is a whole ruach, something, because the child, he will be something coherent. Ultimately, he'll lose that. He'll get married also, and he'll have the far ruchot. But ultimately, the offspring doesn't only receive the DNA from his parents, like the Torah says, "V'davak bishto vayula basar echad," and according to Rashi, you will cleave to your wife and become one flesh, is talking about the child. The child is one flesh, but it's not only that the child has one coherent set of DNA, but the child has spiritual DNA also. The child takes his parents and including the relationship between them, and something coherent is created. So every child is one ruach which is built from the four ruchot of his parents. And if I go back to the beginning of this passage, the passage began saying that only the Messiah has four ruchot. And maybe what we're saying is if you want to achieve a Messiah, if the parents have a full relationship, as they should, that their relationship expresses the totality of the arba ruchot, of the four ruchot, that child will have an aspect of the Mashiach, the Messiah, inside of him. Maybe I'll read, there are many passages, similar passages in the Zohar about the kiss of love, but maybe I'll mention one more that appears actually in this week's Parsha, in the Zohar Mishpatim, that the Zohar talks about Yaakov's kissing Rachel. And the Torah says that V'yishek Yaakov Rachel, Yaakov kisses Rachel on their first encounter, V'yisa et kolo v'yavech, and he weeps, he cries. The question is, why is he crying? He sees someone very beautiful, love in first sight. He goes, he kisses her. Why is he crying? So there are midrashim that say that Yaakov had a vision of the future and realized that he and Rachel would not be buried together. So he's crying because of the future. But the Zohar has a different approach. The Zohar says, Lama bacha, why does he cry? Ela b'dveikut haruach ba, lo yachol alev nizbol ubacha. He's crying, it's a cry that comes because of being overwhelmed with emotion. It's emotional tears. It's by linking with Rachel, that connection of spirit and spirit was so powerful, so overwhelming, that the Zohar says his heart wasn't able to contain all that, and so it's tears of being overwhelmed with spirit and emotion. Okay, so we have a major vision for the future, and I think this really is a very major chidush, because again, I see that modern society certainly, as it sees relationships probably you start at a pinnacle and slowly things at best are static, more likely go downhill, because you look at all the movies, you look at all the music, and it's all about these early starts of relationships. And fortunately, many musicians and actors never really did have a long-term love relationship. So here we're really faced with the challenge and maybe a message of within Judaism to say that a vision of a relationship that is always building, to achieve those arba ruchot that are always interplaying, to keep building something higher and higher. There's a Dvar Torah of Shagar about the sukkah, which it sounds nice, but it's totally against everything I believe in, everything said now, so I did something to try to rectify that Torah. Rav Shagar says, what's the sukkah all about? He says, the sukkah, let's imagine you have a couple, when they're a young couple, they don't have any money, they're living in some rundown caravan somewhere, but as years go on, they become wealthy, they're living in a mansion, but they feel something's gotten lost from that time period when they were this young couple. So every year they leave their mansion and they go back and live in a rundown caravan in order to relive those moments of the beginning. So it's a great explanation of sukkah, but against everything I believe. So what did me and Michal do? After 20 years of marriage, we left our large house. We're doing some renovations, and for half a year we lived in the middle of nowhere on a caravan in the East Hill, and the caravan with 7 kids, a dog and a cat, and the door was broken, so we had to put a chair next to the window just to come in and out. So we were able to say, wow. So every time we're in the sukkah, we could say, wow, remember how sweet it was after 20 years of marriage when we were living together in the caravan with the kids, our dog, our cat. Was a gewalt. Sof davar, hakol nishma, et Elohim yira, ve'et mitzvotav shmor, ki ze kol ha'adam.